go to the problem solving stages. Now that we get feedback, we want to take this feedback to heart and make use of it for our own development. Now, what do we do? Now, let's presume you haven't fallen into any of the traps that are typical when it comes to feedback, like blocking out emotions or immediately jumping in to storytelling. But you want to address a troubling, complex problem that has many layers. Okay, you've mentioned it lightly before, maybe in passing, but it didn't appear to have any impact on the counterpart or the other person. And you see that the problematic behavior continued. It didn't solve anything. So it's now becoming entangled, okay, with other issues. Okay, it gave birth to other complications, which creates a strain in your relationship. And you're afraid that if this keeps on going, you might end up in a major conflict that would severely impact the relationship that you have. So you decided that okay, let's go ahead and address this as soon as possible. Great. How do we do this without things getting out of hand? Okay. To solve the problem, okay, in this particular situation, there are four critical stages when it comes to addressing complex issues. Okay. The first stage is getting the other person to take the issue seriously. Okay. The second stage is they have to be willing to fully share what's going on for them. The third stage, you want to arrive at a mutually satisfying solution, both of you agreeing to it, and not just settle for a minimum or even a compromise. That will probably just end the discussion, but doesn't really make any progress in your relationship. And finally, the fourth stage, you need to determine if the relationship is in need of some repair work, because when the discussion has been contentious, it is easy for each person to feel bruised and the relationship to suffer as a consequence. Now, each stage is helped by following the feedback model if we don't follow it. Okay. Now, what's nice about feedback and conversations about feedback is that you don't really need to make things perfect. All it takes is just simply getting things running, okay, and making sure that you make some incremental progress along the way. Okay. Remember, the only mistake is refusing to learn from your mistakes. Now let's start with the first stage, getting the other person to take the feedback seriously. Now, people will usually consider your concerns if they see that your intent in doing so is in their best interests. Okay. So, what are ways on how to get them to potentially take the feedback seriously? Well, number one, you can mention the impact to you. And of course, making sure that these things are objective. Another way to get the person be serious about your feedback is you mention how the behavior is not helping you reach your goals. Okay. Maybe that's still about impact, but this is more long term. Okay. So by mentioning how this person has been affecting in you not meeting your goals, that is another way to get them a little bit more serious. Okay? Now, another way of bringing up the feedback to their attention is mentioning how it's costing you, costing the other person, costing everybody else. Okay, it might be that it's not affecting you. It might be that your goals aren't really impacted by it, but there are unnecessary costs that have to be borne because of what that other person is doing. You can mention that. Okay. And that would probably make the other person pay attention to you now. Or because you are a party of the relationship, you can make yourself, okay, as the reason, okay, why you want the other person to take the feedback seriously. Am I doing anything that is causing your behavior? Okay. So these are four things possibly that would, capture their attention and maybe take your feedback seriously. But the thing here is that that's the first step, because if the other person seems to be very dismissive about your feedback or is not really interested or doesn't even believe you, then no matter what happens, everything else will not be solved. But once you've established that the other party is going to take your feedback seriously, now we go to the second stage, in which case it's just simply sharing all the issues. All the issues. You have to disclose all the issues. Okay? Not some issues. And take note, it is in the plural form. There are many issues. They need not be equally in weight. Okay, they're not equally important. Okay, some issues may have come later in the course of time. Some issues might impact just you only. Some issues might impact both of you or impact everybody else. Okay, the important thing is that you want to address all the issues. Not only can the person initiating the feedback have several issues, but even just the matter of raising them can trigger the other person's concerns. So there will be more issues. Okay. When problems are complex and they're intertwined, things can feel messy. And that's the reason why most of us don't really like to discuss this because it's too messy. It doesn't look clean. Okay. Well, fact of the matter is there's no way around it. Okay. Uh, but you do have a choice. You know that by not addressing this now, you'll probably not address it anymore in the future. It will probably go away. Okay. Or you can address it now. Things might get a little bit heated, but it's possible to press on. Okay. Even if both of you are on a defensive position, yes, it will still feel messy. Okay. But you can stop the escalation in order to separate out the intertwined issues. Because the issues are complex, one way that you can perhaps make a little bit of progress, but not really resolve everything, is trying to separate out those issues. Try to untangle them. And obviously, there are some issues that cannot be fully decoupled. Okay, that's fine. But try to address them. Try to look at issues one at a time and have some sort of an understanding that, okay, you try to resolve the issues one at a time, or maybe if there's really no way around it, that you try to keep yourselves focused on the discussion. Okay. And if that doesn't work, if things are just going on some perpetual loop, well, you can ask yourself, why are we stuck? This allows you to process how you got into that situation in the first place. And only then can you move forward if you can understand why you were stuck. Okay, this would probably not work all the time if it's just going to be a mutual blame game, right? What's important is that blaming means that you're attributing intent on the other person, which doesn't really help in making progress with any relationship. Now, instead, both parties need to look at the specific behaviors. Again, we go through those specific behaviors, objective realities that can be observed, right? That led the discussion, of course, and then share whatever feelings that came up along the way. Now, this is also a good time to reiterate that your intent in giving the feedback is not because you want to be vindictive. It's not that you want to be vengeful, but it's because you want to help each other. You want to help the other person. You want to help yourself. You want to help the relationship. And then you can go back to problem solving. Now, this second stage is really, really difficult. There's no formula, there's no recipe for success here. And more often than not, you could fail. But that's fine. That's all part of building skill. And the moment that you've gone through these battles in and out, the more wars that you chalk up in your own experience, then it's easier for you to tackle bigger and bigger and more complex issues in the future. Okay. But supposing you've been successful in sharing all of the issues in the second stage, now you go to the third stage, which is really resolving the issues. Rather than just searching for an answer, it's important to recognize that there are multiple desired outcomes. So it's not a unidimensional experience wherein I'm just here to solve the issue. Everything else, I don't really mind. No. No. First, you want to ensure that the discussion has solved the initial problems in a way that satisfies both of you. Okay. These sorts of problems usually have more than one viable solution. Okay. There's no fixed correct answer. There are many ways of doing it. Okay. Sometimes the temptation is just to grab the first thing that is available, just because we want to relieve ourselves of the stress or the tension. Maybe it's a strong temptation. I just don't want to feel it. It's so uneasy. It's messy. That's a solution. Looks good. We take it. No, we fight against that temptation. Instead, continue to explore options until you discover a solution that meets the needs of both. Okay. Sometimes in the course of the discussion, you might be feeling okay about a candidate solution, but the other party, you can see it from the face that doesn't seem to be, he or she doesn't seem to be so convinced. Okay. Well, don't stop there. Really try to understand and make sure that both of you are honestly happy with the solution. Okay. Now, the second thing that you want to look into is that you want the discussion to improve your problem solving ability. Again, we'll go through many of these wars, and it's not always going to be pretty. But by going through this, you actually improve your skills, okay, in how you solve problems. Now, this may include understanding how you got into this problem in the first place, but it should also examine how you went about in resolving it. Okay, sometimes the destination is not important, okay, or is not the only thing important, but the journey itself is also important. Okay, the objective is to increase each person's willingness to raise difficult issues in the future. As you keep on doing this, you will notice that you are becoming more and more comfortable in raising more difficult and tackling complex issues, and that's good. And that's good, and because from a personal standpoint or from a professional standpoint, that gives you more courage to be more responsible with a lot of things. And that can only happen if you've had some sort of battle experience from which you've actually drawn a lot of lessons for yourself, okay, and build skills in the process. Now, the third and perhaps fourth thing that you want to look into talks about the relationship itself, right? So the first two talks about the problems, the solutions, the objective reality of what you want to happen. But you also want to take a look at the relationship itself. When you resolve certain problems, certain issues, understand that the relationship is also impacted. So one thing you need to ask yourself, okay, is do you know each other better now because of the discussions that you shared? Okay. And sometimes that might even diminish of your picture about the other person. Okay. I mean, that's fine. I mean, not everyone is perfect, but as long as you guys are both honest in trying to grow, then that picture, as you know, is not always going to be static. Now, another question that you want to ask yourself is, has your relationship improved as a result of that effort? Did it sour, or did it become more difficult? Well, in any case, I mean, you want to make sure that when you start resolving these things, you try to resolve the issues, and you also try to resolve the relationship. Now, the last stage, the fourth stage, talks about repairing. Okay, what needs to repair? Okay, so if you've achieved what needs to be achieved from a resolution standpoint, okay, very good, well done. Now, the relationship isn't what it used to be before. There needs to be some repair work that needs to be done. And the process is not necessarily an easy one. Okay, things may have been said that would have hurt the other person, or you might have regret saying things to certain people. Okay, but the thing there is, that has the importance of the relationship to both of you been lost in the process? Do you still value the relationship? Or is it possible that one of you or the other person, might have diminished the value of the relationship? Now, apologizing, saying sorry is always a critical component of any repair. But perhaps because of pride, because of ego, we can't bring ourselves to apologize. Okay? Some see it as a form of weakness. Okay? And there's that danger of being misinterpreted. Others might even think that you say sorry because that person wants to manipulate the other person. Okay? But however we think about these things, well, apologizing or any apology, as long as it's sincere, is always very powerful. Okay? It makes that signal that you really want to repair the relationship. Okay? Um, and a good apology conveys that you're truly sorry. Okay? And that really helps you get some brownie points in the process, which helps in restoring the relationship. Now, aside from apologies, affirming the other person, acknowledging the other person also matters. Okay. Remember, you're in a relationship with another person. In other words, it's not just you. The fact that you're affirming the other person, that that other person exists, that you acknowledge and recognize what that person brings to the relationship, that is another step in trying to repair that relationship. And it's good that you keep on affirming that. You acknowledge the good things that that person has done for the relationship. Okay. So it matters. Okay. And lastly, you may want to review as you're repairing certain things. Are you really sure that all of the issues have been resolved? Okay. It's possible that in the course of the discussion, you might be thinking that it's everything, but later on, you might be reminded of some things. Okay. Well, do you think you need to raise it right away? Well, not necessarily. Okay. Depends on how related those issues are. But the fact that you probably have recalled them later on, it's possible that they're not as important as you think they are. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to resolve them anymore. Okay. You just want to take time. Sometimes it's not about doing a big bang approach wherein all of the issues you try to solve it in one big blow. Okay. Sometimes they can be done in stages, okay, in incremental processes. And this is probably similar to surgery of conjoined twins, for example. Back in the old days, they tried to come up with a clean solution as to trying to separate the conjoined twins as soon as possible. But they found out that the rate of success with that type of approach is actually very low. You run the risk that one of the two twins or both of them would actually die because of complications from surgery. But in recent times, they've realized that when you want to separate, you do it by phases. You don't try to break off in one clean swoop. And that's the thing also when it comes to raising issues. Of course, at that moment, anything that really needs to be addressed, you try to address it. Okay. But then, if along the way and you realize that there were certain issues that haven't been raised, well, maybe it doesn't make sense to raise it right away. But you would be the better judge of that. Okay. All what I'm saying right now is that sometimes you really have to assess and think for yourself, and maybe there are certain things that don't need not be resolved right now, but give yourself some time, let the relationship heal for some moment, and then maybe if the opportunity arises, okay, then that's a good time for you to raise those particular issues. If nothing else, checking in, trying to check in with the other person, see how they're doing, is actually a form of repair in itself.